Yo, yo, yo. It is the exam coach checking in with episode 214 of the Exam Coach podcast. And this one is called How I Motivated Myself for Exams. Look, this is an addition to, when I look back on it, a small molehill turning into a mountain of exam coach motivational content to do with exams. If you don't know what else is out there that I've done on motivation and exams, studying, etc., check this out. On YouTube, there are 2 videos. One of them is called 5 Ways to Create Massive Motivation to Revise. The other one is called 5 Ways Not to Motivate Yourself for Exams. 2 good YouTube videos there. Check them out. I'm now obviously doing this podcast, which is on my own personal motivational journey and how I became motivated for exams. And it's going to be part of a bigger blog post called How Do I Become Motivated for Exams? Again, just switching up the titles here. But it's going to play a part in that because I want to put together something that you can use as a resource to refer to if you want to find some motivational techniques that you can use. And this podcast, in addition to other ones which I'm digging through and finding, and I will append them to the bottom of the blog post. So in the blog post, there'll be the videos, some text, obviously being the blog post itself, this podcast, and then some other little sound bites that I've done over the years. But it's all to do with motivation, how to find it, how to create it, and little strategies you can use in the moment to stop you from procrastinating, which is the enemy of motivation, obviously, and actually giving you good reasons, both long-term and short-term, to get stuff done, to study, and to work towards your exams. Okay, if you want the scientific thinking around motivation, just going to have a drink of water, excuse me. Bit of liquid thinking there. Beautiful. Anyway, if you want the scientific thought behind motivation, I'd really encourage you to take a look at the blog post because that is going to have a lot of that within it. All the wordy stuff, all the academic stuff on motivation. And that's going to be published shortly after this podcast. So if you're listening to this, just be patient, and the blog post will be on the website, on the blog, and you can see all the information consolidated there in one place. So it's nice and easy to access. Okay, in this, I want to talk about what I believe to be the foundation of motivation. And essentially, for me, it's your belief system, right? It's how you interpret the world around you. And the most powerful type of motivation, if you want to get a bit academic with it, in the terms that Daniel Pink puts it, and Daniel Pink wrote a book called Drive, which talks about the science of motivation. And, it's not that kind of think positive kind of stuff. It's actually backed up by experiments, scientific rationale that stacks up against objective argument. And the key thing that he's identified is there's two types. There's extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is the motivation to perform an activity for its own sake and your own personal satisfaction. This is the stuff that this podcast episode is going to be focused on, because he says, and I agree with it too, just looking at the studies that have been done and what's out there on looking at what really drives people, it's the belief systems, it's the long-term mindsets that actually brings about consistent performance. The other type of motivation is extrinsic motivation. So this is where we're motivated to earn a material reward or avoid punishment. And it's a bit more short term. It does have its uses, but it's not as sustainable, because think about it, just by virtue of that explanation right there, it says that we're motivated to earn a material reward. Material rewards are, number one, not always available. Number two, not always compelling enough, because materialism is, done on a sliding scale. You can attribute a certain amount of value to each material thing, whereas a feeling or an emotion, you can't really attribute value to that. And they're expendable, right? They just might not be available. So it's difficult to manufacture, whereas if you've got it just driving, like that fire inside, that intrinsic motivation, it's going to be a bit more powerful, and it's going to have a little bit more durability and longevity to it. The analogy I like to use here is intrinsic motivation is a bit like porridge, if you want to use a nutrition metaphor. So think about porridge. It's a slow release carbohydrate. It's something that if you eat it at the beginning of the day, I'm not a nutritionist, but the general consensus seems to be that it is a slow release carb that is going to give you a steady release of energy throughout the day. Whereas if you eat a gummy bear, which is maybe the equivalent to extrinsic motivation, it's a very short, sharp burst, and it dissipates quickly. Yeah, it gives you a good little incentive or good little like pump up, but you can't go through your whole life just eating gummy bears, because you might turn into one. And no, you won't turn into a gummy bear. You just won't be very healthy. Whereas if you eat porridge every day, you'll probably be in decent nick, actually. Balance it out with a few things. There you go. Brand new diet. Healthy as. Sweet. So, I'm going to break this down into 2 stages for you. I'm going to talk about my 4 years old to 12-year-old. Let me start that again. 4-year-old to 12-year-old self. Let's call that primary school. And then I'm going to talk about my 13-year-old to 18-year-old self, secondary school. So in the UK, those are the 2 stages of school, mainly. And I'm just going to talk about different types of motivation that I recognized and that I experienced and went through. And I'm glad I did it, because it really shaped my mindset and how I think about things now, and my motivation levels in not only in my exams and studying, but in everything I do. Okay, let's get into it. Let's dig deep into the archives of the mini exam coach before the exam coach, when he didn't know he was going to be the exam coach. And he was just a little kid with his little school shorts on and comb over and a little school bag, cracked on in school, and just got a few things done. He was attending lessons like any normal kid. And I'd say that the key thing that I remember from that age of 4 to 12 was I really enjoyed playing a lot of sport, and it was something that just I'd always done. I was always playing sports on the weekend for clubs and things, and then school as well. And it was all types of sport, right? Football, rugby, cricket, hockey, athletics, anything, tennis, and any sport. Pretty much everything. Didn't really specialize in one, just loved it. I was really quite energetic, was always outside, was not reading books. It was either gaming, usually things like WWE SmackDown, which I'd then go out and, me and my brother would practice a few of the moves on each other. Obviously, do not try that at home. There is even warnings on the commercials that it advises kids not to try these moves at home. But when it's 3 o'clock on a Saturday and you want to dish out a few pedigrees like Triple H, you accept the consequences of that. They weren't real pedigrees. We were doing it on the trampoline, so there was technically a bit of a canvas involved, and there was no referee though, so there could have been a bit of damage caused, but luckily we both came out of the other end okay. I digress. Okay, so sport was a key thing for me. Really enjoyed it, and had a decent engine, was quite athletic, and that meant that any kind of sport that involved a lot of running around or anything, I was usually okay at it. I could do pretty good, and eventually got to the stage where I began to win quite a few things. Like I would be the best within, say, my school, and then, for example, I'll take running, mid-distance running, 800, 1500 meters. I don't think I lost a race from the age of maybe 6 to 12. And yeah, you're like, okay, cool, man. Like, you haven't lost a race. Sweet. Who's that against? Like the 3 other people in your class? It was against the 3 other people in my class. Yeah. And then the rest of the school. But then also I did national stuff as well. So in the UK, I remember I won those races when I was 12. And it was good. Like I didn't do any training or anything. I just naturally just won them. It was like, okay, let's run around this track as quickly as we can and try and win. And I was really, really, really competitive as well. So I hated losing. And in fact, I was a little bit of a sore loser. I had to learn that lesson. But yeah, I just did a lot of running, and that helped out other sports as well. I remember captaining a few football teams, rugby, cricket, things like that. Being proficient, being able to do well, hold your own, and that was great. But around the time of 13, I started losing, and I started losing heavily. So I mean, these kids who I was beating by minutes on any kind of running, cross country, 1500 meters, they came back after a few months away from the summer and destroyed me. It was only one or two of them, but still, I was coming third and I'd never lost before, or second and I'd never lost before. And I wasn't just coming third, I was getting beaten by 30 seconds or so. So they'd not only shaved off the minute that I was beaten by, but beating me by an extra 30 seconds. So I really had slowed down. I was like, wow, what's going on here? What's going on? I didn't do any training. So that was one of the first things that I noticed. Okay, maybe is it because I'm not doing training? And then the other thing is obviously the genetic thing, right? People develop at different rates, and around the age of 13, that's when, in boys start to develop, they start to mature, you get testosterone, you start building up muscle, getting taller, quicker. And you can see this, the whole time in fact, I was looking at a study just earlier today. It was mentioned in Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers, about ice hockey players, and how a group of sociologists have published a study that basically says that among the players in the 90th percentile of scoring in the National Hockey League, those born in the last quarter of the year score about 9 more points per season than those born in the first quarter. So basically what they're trying to do there is they're basically trying to track back to, okay, why are these players doing better? Because of their dates of birth. And the correlation there tends to be, okay, boys are going to develop at different rates. If you're born earlier in the year, you're likely to develop a little bit earlier. And because of the way in education we categorize things by year group, that could account for the discrepancy in performance in their professional careers. Because think about it, if you grow faster than everybody, you're going to be kind of the physical attributes you have are going to put you in a better position to kind of say, oh, the coach is going to be like, okay, this kid's quick, he's big, we're going to put him in the team, and then we can train him how to play that sport really well. He's going to get the best coaching, and then eventually they will become better than, say, the kids who are really talented but were small and scrawny and weak, and then couldn't develop at a fast enough rate to obtain the best coaching when they needed it. Sweet. The other thing, another just a quick example off the top of my head is New Zealand rugby. You see how in the junior rugby they categorize things. So I think the ages are age 8 to 13. They categorize things by weight, not by age, because the growth rate in that age category, I think it might even be 8 to 15, is very, very different for each person. Meaning you could get two kids who are 13. But one's like 6'4", looks like Superman, and the other one's, scrawny, high voice, scuttling around like a little ant. Reminds me of me. But that's the kind of thing that happened there. Like, was it genetics? Was it that I wasn't training? It was probably a bit of both. And what didn't help either is, my dad was taking me along to football games on the weekend where I was playing under 16 football when I was 13 years old. So I was playing against 15 and 16-year-olds when I was 13. I was a midget. I wasn't, anywhere near right now I'm about, I'd say 6'3", but I was nowhere near that height. Real scrawny, and I got hammered, people putting in slide tackles on me on the wing, and I was flying off the pitch. Anyway, there was two things that I noticed there. Back to the motivational point of this message is that work ethic was a key thing I learned, because I didn't really understand the genetic argument that I've just explained. I suppose I was just a bit too young to understand it, and I really saw it as I wasn't training. I didn't actually deserve to keep on winning these events or sports competitions because really, I hadn't done anything. I hadn't done any training. If you want to call it training, I'd gone outside every weekend, ran about a bit, kicked the ball around, but there was no structure to it. There was no consistency. There was no deliberate training about it. And it really taught me a great lesson that, and I did get pretty upset, to be honest, because as I said, I was a very, very sore loser. I didn't understand how to kind of win with honor, lose with grace back then. And yeah, it was tough because I was losing stuff that I'd won and I didn't know why. And eventually I put my finger on, it's your work ethic. It was very clear to me that if I wanted to start doing things in whatever area of life it may be, sport, academic work, anything, training and putting in work is crucial. You have to do it. It's part of the recipe that you need to put in. And me having that experience from going from perhaps a natural to being dethroned in a way and then having to work back up and really look at things at quite a young age was really, really helpful there. So yeah, I think the first thing that you need to understand about that lesson is understand work ethic is key. And it really helped me to put things into perspective where I looked at my academic work, which was never really my strong point, but it was the start of the process of me saying, well, if I begin training, if I begin just doing my homework properly, actually looking at a dictionary, finding out some new words, expanding my vocabulary, trying, not just turning up and not really caring, I will improve. And all these other kids have just been doing that while I haven't been. And all I need to do is just start training and make the training better and better and better so that my performances become better, and that will snowball and I'll get better and better and better at my academic work. So first things first, motivation. If you want to have it, I think the key thing to understand is work ethic and training is crucial to any result. And that can be highly motivational because you know that you can impact that. The next thing that I learned or went through was competition. So, for example, the sports went downhill at the age of 13, right? I was just gonna have another little sip of water here. I was losing. I wasn't doing very well. Physically, I was just a lot smaller, slower than other people, just getting mown down in rugby and things like that. So I kept that going. I had like decent technique and stuff, so I could still play in the teams. It just wasn't the best anymore, which kind of sucked. But that's the way it is. That's the hand you get dealt, and you just got to deal with it. But you look for what you can control. And I said, right, I can control my training in the classroom. So let's see if I can do that. I was fed up of losing in the classroom. I wanted to channel that competitive nature that I had in sport into my classroom efforts, my behavior in the classroom. I got fed up of being at the bottom of the class the whole time, kind of being written off as a bit dumb, not knowing stuff, coming last. And the key thing here that I understood as well was, even though I'd lost a lot of time by not having started when everybody else did. So, for example, I wasn't reading books when I was younger. My parents didn't go to universities where they read Shakespeare and things like that. Yeah, they read it at school and things, but a book was never put in my lap when I was 6, and I was encouraged to read. It was very much PlayStation, going outside, very good social education, but academic education, not amazing. And that's fine. I just said, okay, now my academic education is going to start. So I'm going to pick it off from here. I'm going to apply that idea of work ethic and training, and I'm going to go for it. And things like maths, which I found really tough, I just applied basic mindsets such as have a good work ethic, repeat the training, and understand that I'd never actually worked hard at this stuff. And if you're thinking this as well, sitting there or whatever you're doing right now, listening to this podcast, just ask yourself, have you ever actually tried as hard as you possibly can in the classroom and not being afraid of what anybody thinks of your efforts, or because you're the class clown, not playing that role anymore and actually trying and doing the homework? Because I guarantee you, once you start doing it, you won't be coming bottom anymore. The other thing you'll do is you'll start looking for ways to get stuff done a bit quicker. What is the smartest kid in the class doing? How are they doing the questions? What are they writing down? And having the ability to have a bit of perspective there and learn from the people who have done better than you, have had that training because their parents either encouraged them to read, or they were doing abacus puzzles, or the little abacus set thing when they were 3 and they didn't have the maracas or whatever you had when you were a baby to kind of occupy yourself. That kind of stuff does count, and it obviously impacts how intelligent some people are when they come to school. But a crucial thing you have to understand is you can change that by harnessing your competitive nature in one area and implanting it into another, applying principles that work across different disciplines. Really, really important. Okay, so to summarize that kind of deep dive or little inquest into my childhood self. Number 1, in order to be motivated, understand work ethic and how you can impact the output you have by influencing the input. Too many people are in the mindset of things are just the way they are and you can't change them. Remember, that was the mindset that I had when I was winning all the sports, and I was quickly brought down to earth, because it's not about that. Yeah, you do get a little bit of talent, but ultimately it's about the training and the effort that you put in to change stuff and improve. Number 2, take positive behaviors and implement them into other activities. For example, with me, I was insanely competitive, hated losing. I transferred that characteristic into my schoolwork deliberately, consciously, and I began I didn't enjoy losing in class. I wanted to become the best. I wanted to try and do the best I could. And once you do that and you back it up with work ethic, you're going to get different results. You're also going to start learning from the best people out there. Just like you notice that the kid who's taking the netball goal shots, the free throws, that person's got a certain technique, right? They're flexing their knees less, or they've got stiffer wrists, meaning that the ball's going to be on a straighter trajectory into the hoop. You notice that, you watch and learn. The same thing with your schoolwork. The person who's taking the free kicks for the football team, you notice that they're hitting it, they're doing the knuckleball, or they're hitting it like David Beckham with that kind of instep motion to get that curl. You look at that and you learn from it. The same thing applies to your academic work. Look at what they're doing, look at their work, ask them questions, chat through stuff with them between lessons. And just to finish up these 2 points, if there's nothing that you can do about it, if you can't change it, a bit like the genetic stuff that I was going on earlier about, just accept it. Accept it early and get on with it. Get on with the stuff that you can improve, and search for the positives in the situation. Go after the improvement. The quicker you can do this, the better, because all that energy that you would spend on complaining or rationalizing your shortcomings, you're going to be putting that energy into actually putting a plan together and improving. Sweet. So that deals with that 4 to 12 age category in the motivational transitional journey I went through. Let's talk about 13 to 18. So this is when I moved to my secondary school, and my secondary school, my junior school was nice, a lot of nice people there, a lot of great opportunities, but the main difference between it was in my secondary school, I went to a boarding school, so didn't go home much, was sleeping over at the school. It was independent, so you paid fees to go, and it was an unbelievable opportunity, and I was the first person in my family to actually get given that opportunity, got like a bursary and everything to go there. It was great. And the key thing that I learned, or I had going in, but I didn't fully appreciate it, I suppose, because I got a few dodgy reports at the beginning for mucking about, was perspective, right? The opportunity that I had at that school was phenomenal, and I had to take it. It was as simple as that. But it's very difficult to keep that front of mind every day, because some days you wake up, you're feeling a certain way and you just want to muck around. Other days you wake up and you're feeling a bit more focused. reminding yourself regularly of the opportunity you have and really setting up proper perspective so you can see how fortunate you are to have the opportunity you have. And for me, I definitely saw that very, very clearly. I tried to remind myself of it every day, whether it was just writing something in my kind of planner where it was maybe just one word, like opportunity, everything's an opportunity, something like that, or just in the morning, just taking a bit of time just to say, look, this is really good. Like, you've got a lot of things set up in your favor here, and understanding that you're incredibly fortunate, and someone, no matter how bad you think your life is or setup is, someone is always worse off than you are. So, for example, there's maybe some of you listening to me right now being like, oh, you know, you're very lucky, you're very fortunate to have gone to this lovely school when I'm going to this. I talk to at a lot of underperforming state schools or comprehensive schools, and some of them that are the underperforming ones are, you know, it's tough. There's some real problems there, some issues that everybody's got to overcome. The teachers have not got much time. Other things are happening in the school that makes learning difficult. And it's very easy to kind of get very, very negative very quickly. But there, what I'd say is, again, it's perspective. So many kids around the world would give a lot to just have the opportunity to go to that school, to just be able to work in a warm classroom, to be able to do the exams you're doing. I mean, I was looking up the other day, there's something like 600 Bangladeshi students out of Bangladesh got these awards for GCSEs and fantastic performance. They'd done really, really well. And I just looked at a few of the photos, and I looked at like kind of the environment they're in and the resources they have available to them. And those kids are just, their perspective is unbelievably positive, because, you know, they don't have much. When you don't have much, you're always trying to just make the most of everything. You're trying to see the opportunity in everything. And I think with social media and the internet, especially when you get this perfect view of life that's often promoted or shown on Instagram, and there's a lot of comparison going on, it can lead to some very negative perspectives that just aren't very helpful for actually being able to make progress. Rather, people look at how bad they've got it and start comparing themselves in that way, instead of looking at the flip side, which is how fortunate you are. And that's just so important to understand. Even if you don't have much, understanding how fortunate you are, just taking a little bit of pleasure and pride in the small things. Just, you know, anything. Just having stationery available to write stuff, having a phone that you can look up all the world's information on whenever you like. It's up to you how you use these tools, and all I'm trying to say is try and develop that perspective. Yeah, I'll take it. Maybe it was easier for me. Maybe I had a few more things like teed up for me. And that's my lot. Like, I was very, very fortunate to have that. But if I can help you with one thing, is whatever situation you're in, just try and look at the positives. There's always someone worse off. And just having that self-awareness and trying to help other people out is really, really important, and will help your motivation a lot, because you'll always be, again, looking for the opportunities on the front foot and trying to make progress instead of comparing yourself to what you don't have, or like something that you think is better than your current situation. Just keep your head down and focus on making small gains. The next thing is objective thinking. So I think a lot of motivation can be summed up by thinking objectively. So what I mean by this is it's an empirical way of thinking. The idea that don't just take what other people say for granted, especially in a school environment. So for example, there's a lot of kids who are older than you maybe, and they were at my school, that will do things or behave in a certain way, and you'll just copy them because you think, oh, they're older, they definitely know better. or they're the cool kid, or they clearly know more about life than I do because I'm just a small little kid and I don't know what I'm talking about, kind of thing. I think one of the things that is important to keep in mind is always look at things through your own experience, right? Actually test these things that these people say. Say, okay, this person's behaving this way. Do I actually think that is a good way to behave? Based on my opinion on that, based on what I'm receiving, the feedback I'm receiving from the environment derived from my senses. Really, really important that you do that, because one, it will turn you into an individual, and two, it will make you feel in control of your own decisions about what you do, when you do it, how you do it, that kind of thing. And that can be incredibly motivational. And it's really going to help you out because that objectivity about not only other people's behavior, but your behavior that then might be mapped off of that behavior that you're seeing happening around you is going to be really considered. It's going to be well thought out. It's going to be aligned with what you actually care about rather than just doing stuff because other people do it. It's moving you away from this groupthink mentality, which is so easy to fall into, and rather you're going to be making a lot of decisions based on your values and what you actually care about. And that's the thing. I think a lot of people do deep down, they would like a good set of grades. They would like to study, but in a lot of schools, it's just not the cool thing, right? It's just not cool. Like that's how the group thinks about it. And it was the same at mine. Like, it wasn't cool to try hard. It's not cool to be putting in a lot of effort, not getting any results, or putting in a lot of effort and getting some good results. It's just not the dominant cultural stereotype of what the cool person is. Now, that can change a little bit in every school, sure. I think the coolest thing, in fact, and the people that I had the most respect for at school were always the people who just were individuals in the way they thought and did things, and they didn't just follow what the group thought. And they're the people that always end up doing the things that everybody else wishes they could do. That's the most important thing that you got to remember, is that just being an individual, being objective about the world around you, and making decisions that are actually aligned with how you want to behave is always going to put you in the best spot. So I'll give you one example of an individual who at school did their own thing, and right now in the present it's paying off. And then I'll give you an example of a situation that I observed when I was at school, and some objective thinking and really thinking about what I cared about, what mattered to me, and what I wanted to achieve changed my behavior in relation to most other people's. So the first one is, I went to school with a guy who right now he travels the world doing wildlife documentaries. You know, he's taking all the amazing pictures of all over the world, animals, wildlife in its natural habitat, unbelievable kind of environments that he's in, and awesome pictures he's taking and videos, and looks amazing, right? It's what he wants to do. Do I think everybody in the world wants to do that job? No. There's a lot of people who don't want to sit in a hide or a hedgerow for 10 hours trying to take a picture of a leopard or a hedgehog. But if you want to do that, and that is the career that you would prefer to do, wow, fantastic, amazing job doing it. But the thing is, you look at that career right now, on its own, in kind of the spectrum of careers you could possibly have, it's pretty exciting, right? Being outdoors, awesome wildlife all around you. You see those documentaries that Attenborough makes, unbelievable. Library of first class documentaries Sir David Attenborough's made. Phenomenal body of work over his lifetime, and it's amazing to be able to give people that insight into the natural world. But when this chap I know was at school, that was not the cool thing, going out and taking pictures of wildlife. It was the cool thing to be in the sports teams, to, I don't know, have a little bit of a fun and a joke sometimes, about stuff that wasn't to do with wildlife, just other cultural stuff online or memes and things like that. But he stuck to his guns, and yeah, he did play sport, and he did, he wasn't a total outcast. But what he did do is he focused on what he wanted to do, and he didn't let anybody else's opinion of that's not cool, it's a bit weird that you're like crawling around in these bushes trying to take a picture of this butterfly, and they were quality pictures, but it just wasn't that cool back in the day. But now, people who are stuck in dead-end jobs, not doing what they want to do because they closed down all their options at school because they weren't brave enough to actually chase what they wanted to do. Instead, they just followed the crowd. They didn't have any objectivity about the way they were thinking. They just followed what the older kid did, followed what their best friend did, followed what the cool kid did. Instead, there were guys like this guy I'm talking about who did their own thing, and they didn't care what anybody else thought about it. They just plowed away. And I remember I did the sports newsletter at my school in my last year, and it was amazing that he would take pictures of the sports teams as well while they were playing, but there would be red kites flying overhead, or just a deer in the background, or just cool shots that we'd be able to put in, and that was pretty awesome, him being able to do that. But it wasn't fully appreciated when he was at school. But the trick of it is, because he knew what he wanted, he powered through, and it didn't matter what anybody else thought, if it was cool or not. And now it's like the coolest thing ever. You go to all the reunion drinks, and everybody's like, "Oh, where have you been, man? Like, where you're off to, traveling around the world?" While I'm working at my local cafe, or not saying that the local cafe is a bad job. I just think that the people who are working in the local cafe is not their dream job. Very, very few of them are like, "I want to be a barista." There are some people who do, but these people, that is not their dream job. And that's the point I'm trying to make. Be objective about what you want and go for it. Don't care about what anybody else thinks, because the world's a lot bigger place than just the 600 people, or however many people are in your school. So make your own decisions in that way. Similar thing with me is, as I said, I went to a boarding school, so the insight that gave me is I got to see what everybody did with their time all the time. You're next to 60 other blokes the whole time at school. You're in dorms with them. You either have a room next to them, you're in their room just chatting away, and you can see how they work, what they do, how they spend their time, their mentality, all those things. And definitely within certain areas of the lads that I was matey with at school, watching big series of shows, so classics are like In-Betweeners or 24, all these kinds of Skins, all that. And they're entertaining. There's a reason why people watch them. But with me, I just thought, am I going to get into this? Do I want to be a part of that culture? Do I actually care about it that much? Do these shows, and this is where I get a little bit neurotic maybe, and I appreciate that, but I want to be useful the whole time. I want to find utility in things, and then I want to be able to project that utility out into my day-to-day and use it to help people or add value. And unless I'm going to be a Hollywood producer, which I don't want to be, or in film, which I don't want to be. Both of those things are film, really, aren't they? But that's beside the point. The key thing is I noticed that actually, even though that might be the cool or in thing to do, I don't want to do that. I don't want to spend my time that way, so I'm not going to. And the amount of time, in my view, people wasted away getting addicted on those shows, or it could be maybe addiction to social media or Instagram feeds, or living vicariously through someone else's life on a social media channel now. You waste so much time. And if that's not actually, like, if it's your life goal to live vicariously, that is experiencing life through someone else on the internet. If that is your life goal, great, go all in on that. If that's going to bring you happiness, I don't know any better, you do that. But all I'm saying is, if you definitely know that that is not, and I knew that the kind of escapism that people seek through these shows that have a lot of shows stacked up, so they suck out a lot of your time and kind of take you into a new world. I didn't want that. I didn't need that. I wanted to focus on my work, and that's what gave me a lot of enjoyment was being useful, succeeding in that, and not worrying about the dominant cultural stereotypes at school. And I think obviously what the wildlife photography guy before me did was way more took way more backbone and individuality than what I did, but they're just small examples of how when you think for yourself and you make decisions based on what you want to do, not what everybody else thinks is cool or what's right, you start becoming incredibly motivated because you're in the driver's seat. I've said it before, and you can just make decisions which you see puts you in places that you actually really want to be, and you can take responsibility for that, both for the wins and the losses, and that's the awesome thing about it. The other thing I want to mention is older kids. There's a funny process that goes on when you mature through your teenage years. So when I was 13, I thought the 18-year-olds who were the big boys of the school, the big girls of the school, however you want to put it, I thought they knew everything. I thought, wow, they've got it sorted out. They must just know how things work. They're so switched on, cool, good at this, good at that. I want to be that kind of thing. But then also I kind of looked up to them in awe, saying, oh, you must know everything. But the funny thing is when I got to 18, I realized how much I still didn't know. And maybe some of you are sitting there now saying, oh, there's this exam coach guy, I'm listening to his podcast. You know, he's in his mid-20s. He must know loads of stuff. And I'm still learning. I'm still very aware of how I have so much more left to learn. And I still feel like I'm learning, developing. Yeah, I can tell you about a few things I've experienced or done or know about a little bit, but I'm still learning. And that's the thing that you've got to understand, is that everyone is trying to figure this out, this thing. I don't want to get too philosophical here, but this thing called life that is a bit of a mystery. Everybody's trying to figure out, okay, what do I actually want to do? How do I want to spend my time? What do I think of this, that, X, Y, Z? All this stuff, people are just trying to figure it out the whole time. It doesn't really matter how old you get. You're always trying to figure stuff out and learn more and understand more. Yeah, your understanding becomes a bit more grounded and you begin to paint a clearer picture of how things fit together. But never forget that. And it just gives you that added perspective to add a bit of your own thinking to what's already been thought by other people in the world. To summarize that section, number one, perspective. Get it. No matter how tough your situation is, always look for the positives. Make the opportunity every day abundantly clear. Things that you just didn't think were opportunities, like having a half-decent breakfast, having running water, just basic stuff like that we just take for granted. Other people in the world just don't have that, and they would give anything just to be able to have the small pleasures and satisfactions and conveniences that we have here in the UK, if you want to look at it that way. Understanding that and just being grateful for it, I think, helps you so much on a day-to-day basis be motivated to just do well, whether it's studying, whether it's just being a bit nicer to people, whatever it may be, or just helping people out, really. So try and gather that perspective. School definitely helped me with that. The next thing is objective thinking. Just try and make your own decisions. Try and question things that other people take for granted, maybe, and test it in the world. I always see your teenage years a little bit like a puzzle. I think that's how I look at mine. I was always testing out behavior that worked and behavior that didn't work. Whether I was consciously doing it or not is another question, but now that I'm looking back on it, I would say that's what I did. I behaved in a lot of different ways. A lot of ways that got me in trouble, a lot of ways that brought me a lot of success, if you want to call it that. Doing well in exams, that's one form of success. I don't think it's the only form, but it's one. And that kind of idea that figure out your own way of doing things. Don't just believe what everybody else or what the oldest kid or the coolest kid or most popular kid does, because they don't really know that much. And don't even, you don't have to believe what I'm saying either. Question what I'm saying. Am I advising you the right things to do? Is there a better way to do things? can you, change things to make it a bit easier for yourself, or find a way that works for you in particular to get this particular task done? And yeah, this is a very broad point that I'm making here, but I think what it all narrows down to is it just puts you in the driver's seat to make decisions and take responsibility for those decisions. And that can be incredibly motivating in order to give you a compelling reason to make some awesome decisions in your life, and then to just take ownership for it, and then map out the next one. It gives you a great incentive to get stuff done and just give it your all. Just have a crack. And with this study thing that you're currently going through, these exams, you might as well just have a good pop at it, You might as well just try and give it your all. You're spending that time in school anyway. You've got to go to classes. You have to be there. You might as well just try your best and have a good pop at it in order to just see what happens. And yeah, if you don't do well, great. Don't worry about it. At least maybe you learned a few things along the way, and then just keep going, rinse and repeat. Apply the lessons to another thing that you want to try and be good at, or just try and spend your time on because that's what you like doing. And just rinsing and repeating in that way, I think, is a really healthy way to just keep the momentum up in your life and keep moving forward in a positive way. I hope you enjoyed those examples and small stories from my time at school. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions on this. I think it's a huge topic, and I made this little additional series to see if you could find anything that you could relate to in this and just apply in your own life. Remember, look at the blog post if you want some really actionable things that you can do that are a bit more plug and play for everybody and not just related to me and my view on it. And let me know if you have any questions. WhatsApp's the best place to get me at the moment, I'd say. Snapchat. I'm trying to get around to a lot of the messages, but there's quite a few in there, so I'm trying to pepper through them as quickly as I can, but some days I get around to it, some days I don't. WhatsApp, I try and keep a good tab on it. And one thing you could do for me that I would really appreciate is just go to the podcast and give it a rating on iTunes, because that really helps spread the word, get the message out there a bit. Let me know what you think, give me some feedback, and let me know anything that you want me to talk about in the future as well. Just trying to help you guys out and figure out the kinds of questions that I was asking back when I was between the ages of 13 and 18, and also wanting to know what you're currently thinking and how I can help you out, just from my experience as well as the students that I speak to every day about what they're currently experiencing and how they can overcome those challenges. So I'm going to leave you to it. I hope you stay motivated and use some of these tips to help you with your exams and beyond in your career as well. I'm checking out.